then he actually did go to Florida and give readings on the area of Bimini, used geological descriptions of Bimini long before he was anywhere in the area, were accurate. And he did suggest that in 68, 69, he said, look for the Atlantis. Now, there were discoveries made between Bimini and the Andros Islands. There was what they now call a road and walls off of Bimini and so forth. For me, more evidential was the discovery in 69 of continental granite in several places in the West Indies. Now, it is absolutely essential that if there were a large continental area there that went down, that continental granite had to be discovered. And I understand from geologists that this is a different kind of granite from other types. We tried to drill on Bimini at one time to hit this continental granite, and we were not able, the equipment was not heavy enough to get through to any continental formation on Bimini at the time. But later, in many places, they brought up, and there are reports, geological reports, of continental granite being discovered, and the geologists said, in their opinion, a continent had gone down or was coming up here, a continental area. Now, this occurred in 69. Educase's material on Bimini itself goes back much further than anything that has been discovered so far. I think the structures that you described there may have been somewhat overemphasized, though it depends entirely on to whom you speak as to how important those are. I don't think there's been any proof yet of anything that goes back far enough back to be associated with Atlantis. There is no question in many people's minds who've investigated the area that they are looking at structures and looking at formations which were man-made and are now underwater. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they go back to the Atlantis period, to that prehistoric period of 10,000 B.C., and on back to 17,000 B.C., and on back to 50 and 100,000 B.C.
One of the Bimini researchers, Dr. David Zink, wrote this account of an expedition in 1974.
In the following, my purpose is to clarify the sequence of various discoveries in the Bahamas, which may ultimately prove to have been the prelude to an exceedingly important discovery for mankind. The earliest events are two of Edgar Cayce's readings on Atlantis. In 1933, the first of them included the statement that a portion of the temples of Atlantis may yet be discovered under the slime of ages of seawater near what is known as Bimini, off the coast of Florida. Later in 1940, Cayce predicted the rise of the western section of Atlantis in 28 years, and Poseidea will be among the first portions of Atlantis to rise again. Expected in 68 and 69, not so far away. The earliest discoveries in the Bimini area go back to 1956. A group of vertical marble columns was then reported in 60 feet of water. In 1958, Dr. William Bell of Marion, North Carolina, found a 6-foot column to the west of the island. It was described as protruding from a double circular gear-like base. The photographs taken in 1958 showed peculiar emanations of light from the base of the shaft. Real excitement, however, began in 1968. A year earlier, Dmitry Rebikov, inventor and underwater archaeologist, had observed from the air a large rectangle which was located north of Andros. Then, during the summer of 1968, two pilots, Robert Rush and Trigg Adams, who were members of the ARE and had been looking for the evidence predicted in the Cayce readings, observed what has since been called the Temple Site north of Andros and just off Pine Cay. It's a structure with approximate dimensions of 60 by 100 feet. The two pilots reported their discovery to Dr. J. Manson Valentine, a Miami archaeologist and anthropologist, and Rebikov. These two then went to the location and found walls 3 feet thick, which were skillfully worked in limestone, and recognized that the temple site approximates the floor plan of the Temple of the Turtles in Uxmal, Yucatan. A news story dated August 23, 1968, released Dr. Valentine's account of the temple, which was located in 6 feet of water, the top 2 feet standing above the ocean floor. Within a mile of the so-called temple, Valentine and Rebikoff found 2 other submerged structures, and since that time, a total of 12 different structures has been located underwater in the Andros area. The same year, on September the 2nd, while looking for various reported sites off Bimini, Dr. Valentine and others found 2 so-called walls protruding about 3 feet above the sea bottom and extending for about 1,800 feet in a line approximately parallel to the shoreline. This was a short distance off Paradise Point, North Bimini Island. In Dr. Valentine's own words, he saw an extensive pavement of rectangular and polygonal flat stones of varying size and thickness, obviously shaped and accurately aligned to form a convincingly artifactual pattern. These stones had evidently lain submerged over a long span of time, for the edges of the biggest ones had become rounded off, giving the blocks the domed appearance of giant loaves of bread or pillows. Some were absolutely rectangular, sometimes approaching perfect squares.
We introduced Dr. Manson Valentine, the Yale zoologist and archaeologist, on last night's program. He has collaborated with Charles Berlitz on his 2 books, Mysteries of Forgotten Worlds and The Bermuda Triangle, and for the past 15 years has been exploring the Grand Bahama Banks, both from the air and underwater. Here's how he described his important Bimini discovery to our interviewer, Noel Moore.
From the air, it resembles a tremendous system. It isn't just parallel rows of stones. But analyzing all my pictures over the past 12 years, I find that there is one gigantic causeway which runs above the bottom at least 600 meters, possibly more, alternating large and small stones, and this has a curved structure near the south end, and then it straightens out, evidently goes under the bottom, and is connected with at least 3 parallel rows of very large stones, which in turn are connected with a whole mosaic of great squares as though they were the foundations of buildings or rooms or something. These, of course, have not even been looked at yet.
Whereabouts are they located?
Right out here.
Off Paradise Point?
Yes, right here, yeah. It's a very large phenomenon. It isn't anything to be disposed of.
And now that we've set our foot solidly on the question of the location of Atlantis, let's rejoin our conversation with Egerton Sykes in Brighton, England.
I would like to clear the problem of Atlantis geography. I read a lot of books, and in these books, many people of many nationalities put forward ideas according to which Atlantis was in Sweden or in North Africa or in the Soviet Union or in America itself. So I would like to know what you think about these theories, about different locations of Atlantis, and then what your own theory about it is.
You see, the Swedish theory was put up by a man called Olaf Rudbeck, writing about 1650, I think, from memory, and he postulated that Uppsala, which was his native town, where he was a professor at the university, had been the capital of Atlantis. I'm afraid there is not the slightest foundation for that claim, but it is quite possible